Hi guys, Ross Hardy from the Hardy team at 𝕊𝕉 Marketing Specialist. I'm here once again with Katie Henry from 𝕊𝕉, who's our resident mortgage expert. And we're going to talk a little bit today about the process after the contract is signed, because there's a little bit of differing expectations as to how long that process might take and what it might look like. So we just want to clear that up and go through it in a little bit more detail today. So thank you, Katie, for taking some time. So after the buyer has signed a contract and we deliver the contract to you, how does that process look on your end?
Sure. So essentially we have 3 business days to make a loan application is how we like to look at it. From the time we receive the contract and enter the address into our system, the application will be disclosed 3 days later to the buyer. Now, it can be disclosed sooner, but the technical time frame is 3 days.
Okay.
So once the buyer receives the loan application, they're going to e-sign it. If they do need to meet in person, we do have an office right here in Spring Hill. We're happy to meet with them face-to-face so they can sign by hand as well.
Okay.
So once the loan application is signed, it then goes to our setup team. Our setup team is going to handle ordering what's called a verification of employment to verify their job, their income with their employer. And then our setup team also reaches out to the title company to order the title work. They send the appraisal payment request to the buyer, and then they trigger the next milestone in the process to our processing team.
Okay.
Now, our processing team is going to take all of the documents that we obtained from the buyer at the time of application, so their driver's license, their income documentation, their asset documentation, and the processor is going to basically compose a nice put together file to submit to the underwriter.
Okay.
From there, an underwriter is going to review all of the information, compare it to the guidelines for whatever loan type they're getting financing for, and then the underwriter could release to us an additional list of conditions along with the loan commitment at that time.
Now, I know it sounds like a lot. I've been through the process a couple of times myself in the last couple of years, and you guys make that very, very easy. But I know a lot of the time frames depend on the speed and ability of the buyer to get you the documents back in a timely fashion.
Correct, most definitely, because a lot of times even the documents that the loan officer obtains up front, sometimes there are a couple of other things that the processor has to get from them. So there may be a document you need to e-sign, or they may review what we obtained and know ahead of time what the underwriter will be looking for.
Okay.
So there could be a few additional requests prior to submitting the file to the underwriter, but yes, the turn time is very much dependent on the buyer and how fast they get things back to us. We truly try to push them to get everything back within 24 to 48 hours max. We always give them a good time frame to be able to obtain those.
That makes perfect sense to keep everything on track.
Correct.
Now, the appraisal is then ordered.
Correct. So the appraisal is ordered during that whole big process. So we at 𝕊𝕉 have our own appraisal department, which is really nice. We don't go through a third party.
Awesome.
So we have an in-house appraisal department. They do randomly select appraisers from a pool of highly vetted appraisers. So it's a little difficult to get on our list. We want to be sure that we have the best of the best out there, the most knowledgeable in the industry. An appraiser is randomly selected. We are notified once that appraiser reaches out to the listing agent to make that appointment. So we are able to tell everybody the date and the time that the appraisal is scheduled for.
Okay.
We also do get the due date for when that appraisal is due back to us. Now, the turn times on all of that are dependent on the appraiser who picks up the order. If we need a shorter turn time, we're able to request things like that. If we need a super short time frame and we need a rush request, that's also an option, sometimes at an additional cost to the buyer.
Okay, great. Now, I know in the past we've had people ask us and say, once the appraisal's done, we're good to go, right? We can close immediately.
Yeah. Right, so we hear that all the time too. And the thing is that there's a lot of moving parts behind the scenes. So essentially, once the appraisal comes in, that appraisal also has to be reviewed by the underwriter. So the underwriter wants to go through and verify that the appraiser didn't forget to notate anything on the appraisal, that the comps seem correct, and also appraisals go through basically like a quality control process as well.
Okay.
So all of those things, take a little bit of time. Essentially, they're quite fast though. So once the appraisal comes in and once we have a loan commitment on the file, sometimes the underwriter will request a few additional conditions from the buyer.
Okay.
Now, we really try to go by automated underwriting findings, if you ever hear anybody talk about that. We don't really issue any feel-good conditions like some lenders do. So our condition list tries to be very minimal that time around.
So there's really a lot going on in the background that the buyer wouldn't necessarily see on their end, but just to know it's happening, you guys are taking care of it.
I would say, you know, once we get those final conditions from the buyer, once we receive the title work from the title company, once we have an appraisal, then the file can be submitted for a final review, and hopefully we would get the clear to close at that point.
Which is everybody's favorite part of the transaction.
Yes,
awesome.
But I do want to mention that, you know, even once a file is clear to close, then the file goes to our closing team. So then our closing team has to work with the title company to settle the final figures to make sure that everybody's being paid the right amount of money, everybody's paying the right amount of money, down to the exact penny.
Okay.
So that process, depends on the title company and our closing team as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, I feel like I'm a little bit better educated about the process now. I can see why that takes the period of time that it does. So on behalf of Katie Henry from 𝕊𝕋ℎ𝕀𝕊 and myself, Ross Hardy from the Hardy team at 𝕊𝕋, thank you so much for watching.